A 16-year-old boy, the city's latest homicide victim, a second male in serious condition as Toronto police try to connect the dots of a double shooting in Etobicoke. We're live at that scene.
And we're learning more about bizarre rock-throwing incidents in the GTA tonight. Another 30 charges have been laid against two suspects.
Plus, Toronto takes a Team Canada approach as tariff threats loom. We're going to have more on the passionate speeches inside the council chamber today.
Candidates hit the campaign trail for another day with the provincial election just weeks away now. We're going to tell you about a promise to scrap tolls on a portion of the 407.
You're watching Live at 5.
Good evening. I'm Bakari Satt.
And I'm Lena Latifat. Thank you for joining us here on Live at 5. The victim of a deadly shooting in Etobicoke has been identified today.
16-year-old Isaiah Foga and another male. They were shot at a building on Capri Road near the East Mall in Rathburn. This was around 5:30 yesterday evening. Both were rushed to hospital where Foga later died.
And for the latest on this investigation and for more on what we're learning about the victim, let's turn to CP24's Phil Perkins, who's been at the scene all day speaking with investigators and witnesses. Phil.
Yeah, Leona Bakari, more so speaking with people in the community here. So there are two high schools bookending where we're standing right now here in this cul-de-sac of Capri, which is by Rutherford, the 427 here in Etobicoke. And when school came out around 3:15 in the afternoon, and unfortunately we got the information that the victim in this double shooting here at 7 Capri Tower, one of the people shot, later succumbed to the injuries, was 16-year-old Isaiah Foga. We had his photo supplied to us by police. I showed the kids, and they're around 16 years of age, and the shock on their face that it was someone their age who was shot and killed in their neighborhood, in this tower, someone that these kids are telling us lives here. Someone's trying to talk to us right now, just rolling over. A lot of people are talking about what has happened here yesterday. I spoke with someone who goes to school just down the street here. They told me that this was quite the scene when this did happen. It wasn't just two people, it was a group of people that were involved in this incident that left two people shot, as we mentioned before. 16-year-old Isaiah Foga dead despite life-saving procedure trying to revive him. We do know that a second person, we don't know much about them. They're still in serious condition at last check with police. I've reached out to them. No update from police in that. They're still looking for two suspects. The only description we're getting from them is that they were masked as they were fleeing. That's the only thing we understand. They're wearing masks when they fled the scene here. Now, talking about reverberations through the neighborhood, we spoke with one person who said that they lost a friend here over a decade ago, just outside the towers. We also spoke to a mother of two who was simply just touched by the update that a 16-year-old boy is now dead from the city's latest shooting. Here's what both had to say.
My reaction is, it's not the first time. In 2011, I lost my friend right in front of the building. And I've been advocating ever since then. I was 24 when that happened. I'm 38 now with two kids of my own. And for this to happen is a lot. My reaction is, you know what? A lot of people say, well, this is terrible. We need some help. I'm actually looking for people who want to get involved with some of the solutions we have already in place, and see how we can pipe resources back into central Etobicoke.
The building itself, I've never had, the management was great and all the tenants. I still have, like I said, I still have friends that live in the building. Right. And
did they say anything about what happened yesterday? Did they notice anything?
They haven't said anything, probably just because they're incredibly shaken up and scared as it just happened yesterday. I saw on a group I'm in that people reported being brought down from their units and onto the floors, and it was extremely traumatic. But paying my respects is the most important.
Yeah, that neighbor just dropping off a pair of roses just at a tree here, just as a mom, a fellow mom, because as we sit here about 24 hours since that double shooting occurred yesterday, there is a family right now grieving after a 16-year-old shot and killed yesterday in these towers. Back to you.
All right, Phil Perkins live in Etobicoke for us tonight. Phil, thanks so much for this. Well, 30 additional charges have been laid against 2 suspects in connection with rock-throwing incidents in Markham and Whitchurch Stouffville.
A 17-year-old boy and an 18-year-old man, they're now charged with 31 counts of mischief under $5,000. The 17-year-old is also now charged with 1 count of assault with a weapon. Both were arrested late last month in York. Police investigation into more than 24 rock-throwing incidents, which began in July of last year, some of which targeted moving vehicles.
We are aware of a total of 29 incidents that date back to July 2024. These 2 males, a 17-year-old and 18-year-old, are now responsible for at least 20 of these incidents. And so there are 9 incidents still outstanding, and our investigators continue to work to figure out who is responsible for the 9 additional incidents, whether it is these 2 males or others.
And OPP are investigating 11 similar incidents on Highway 48 in Markham. In one case, a driver struck by a rock, crashed, and 2 people suffered critical injuries. The OPP tells CP24 they have not connected the accused from the York case to any of their investigations at this time.
And the York Regional Police Special Victims Unit is searching for a suspect in an alleged sexual assault on a bus in Vaughan.
Police released these images of the suspect they are trying to identify tonight. Take a look. A female tells police she was touched in a sexual manner by a male who got on a transit bus at Kipling and Highway 7 last Thursday afternoon. The suspect left the bus at the Vaughan Metropolitan Center just before 5 p.m. Anybody who recognizes this man is asked to call police.
And the owner of a home's unaccounted for after a house fire in eastern Ontario.
The house in Bancroft was fully involved when firefighters and police arrived just after 8 o'clock last night. The OPP Forensic Identification Unit has been called in along with the Office of the Fire Marshal. Anybody with any information is urged to come forward. You can get in touch with Provincial Police in Bancroft or you can contact Crime Stoppers. Well, with only weeks left to go before Election Day, a number of promises were made on the campaign trail today. Everything from ODSP to homeless encampments to the 407 was discussed.
Let's go live to CP24, CJ Liu with the very latest. CJ.
Lena Bakari, with the threat of U.S. tariffs on pause, a lot of the attention on the campaign trail today turned to other issues in the province like housing, affordability, and roads. PC leader Doug Ford was in Pickering today where he made an announcement and he promised to remove tolls on the publicly owned stretch of Highway 407 East that runs between Brock Road in Pickering to Highway 115 in Clarington. He says removing tolls on this road would save commuters around $7,200 a year. He also promised to ban congestion pricing on all provincial and municipal roadways. He also said he will permanently cut taxes on gas and diesel. Take a listen to what Ford had to say today.
We have a capacity issue here. That's the problem. For 10 years, we know all 400 series highways are going to be maxed out, and some sooner than others. That's why we're building the 413. We're building the Bradford bypass. We're going to build this tunnel. We're waiting for the feasibility study. We need more capacity. That's what we need.
Meanwhile, Ontario NDP leader Marit Stiles was speaking in Toronto today in the Parkdale neighborhood. She promised to end homeless encampments, and she called this Doug Ford's biggest failures. She outlined her plan, which includes the NDP creating an additional 60,000 new supportive housing units, but she did not say how much all of this would cost when it comes to her promise. Take a listen to what she said in Toronto.
The Ontario NDP will end encampments by supporting people and helping them find a home to live in. How will we do it? We will support municipalities with their shelter and community housing costs, and we'll also undo the damage that was done when Liberals and Conservatives downloaded housing to cities. We'll get the government back to building supportive housing. That's a permanent home that has wraparound support like mental health care or addiction support and more. We'll help with paying rent to get people out of shelter and into homes quickly, and also free up more shelter space.
In Hamilton, Ontario, Liberal leader Bonnie Crombie promised to double the ODSP payments, which is right now maxed out at $1,368 a person. Take a listen to her promise today.
Pegged to inflation, it will be permanent. The important distinction, though, is that it will be phased over a 2-year period. We won't try and do it all in 1 year. It'll be completed over 2 years.
Like a doubling?
Yeah, we'll start with, start with 50% of it and then they do the doubling the next year.
Bonnie says this pledge goes hand in hand with her priority of finding every Ontarian a family doctor in the next 4 years. Meanwhile, for the Green Party, Mike Schreiner didn't hold any public events today, but Lena Bakari, he will be making an announcement in Guelph tomorrow.
Okay, Sija Liu reporting live tonight on the provincial election campaign. Thank you, Sija. It's 5:10 minus 6. You're watching Live at 5.
How to deal with a potential trade war. That was at the top of the agenda for today's City Council meeting. Coming up, more on the Buy Local campaign that councillors approved.
Welcome back. There is no shortage of patriotism at City Hall these days as the City of Toronto responds to the threats of American tariffs. Members unanimously approved a Buy Local, Buy Canadian campaign today. And for once, everyone on council is on the same page.
CP24's Beatrice Vaisman joins us live from City Hall with more. Beatrice.
Imagine that, all on the same page. I can tell you, Lena Bakar, they're talking about housing right now on the council chamber floors. They are not in agreement about ways to expand that, but they did all agree on one thing. Councillors today voted unanimously in favor of a motion that was brought forward by Councillor Stephen Holiday, which essentially refuted Donald Trump's quips that Canada would become the 51st state. They essentially all agreed that Torontonians simply don't want that. Of course, it's a symbolic motion. It doesn't carry much weight, certainly on the world stage, but a symbolic motion nonetheless. And when you look at something else that got the green light quite easily as well, this push to buy local, to support local, to put local in the spotlight as well. And you talk about patriotism, Lena. I mean, that's really what we're seeing at the forefront of so many conversations happening around the city today, including the one here at City Hall. And so the lever that the city can push and pull when it comes to how it combats this threat of tariffs, which have now been punted forward for the next month, it's a lever when it comes to procurement, awarding contracts. And there's hundreds of millions of dollars of contracts that the city has the power to purchase, contracts for things like TTC, for police, for housing, for building all kinds of things here in the city. And essentially now it looks like the approach by the city is going to be to prioritize local companies, Canadian companies, over American companies with those contracts. Here's a bit of what we heard from a pair of councillors here at City Hall today.
This moment and this particular crisis that we are dealing with and set to address is a moment for us to be able to pull forward those measures that have already been part of our consideration and in place. And also, the situation has been evolving. We have seen just in the last several weeks things moving forward, being pulled back, and the city has to be responsive. And that's what the mayor and council is demonstrating, that we can be responsive.
I'm not hearing anything about affordability relief. And again, folks will know the biggest tax bill the biggest bill people are facing every year is their tax bill, particularly when it comes to small business, our mom and pops on main streets, and their costs, if these tariffs do go through, are going to escalate significantly. So there is the procurement piece, there is the buy local. I don't think we actually need the City of Toronto to tell people to buy local. I think lots of people are already doing that.
According to City Manager Paul Johnson, U.S. goods and services account for roughly 10% of the city's procurement. When you've got a budget that's in the billions, still a lot of cash. And today the mayor essentially asking city staff to go ahead to look into procurement contracts and to look into existing contracts with American companies as well, along with policies as to what can be done in the future to prioritize these local companies from getting those bids. Back to you guys.
All right, Beatrice Vaisman live at City Hall. And the threat of these tariffs has left Canadians feeling more patriotic, according to a new poll.
Yeah, Angus Reid found a 10-point jump in the number of Canadians who said that they're very proud of their country compared with just 2 months ago. The same increase was noted in the number who said that they have a deep emotional attachment to Canada. In response to the tariff threat, nearly everyone polled agreed Canada needs to break down trade barriers between provinces, while 4 in 5 want to increase the country's pipeline capacity.
Well, Prime Minister Justin Trudeau has organized a summit to try to spur activity in the face of tariff threats.
Okay, the Canada-U.S. Economic Summit is going to be held in Toronto Friday, and it'll bring together business and labor leaders alongside members of the Government Council on Canada-U.S. Relations. The goal is to find ways to grow Canada's economy, make it easier to build and trade within the country, diversify export markets, and rejuvenate productivity. Federal cabinet ministers there in Washington this week looking for a permanent solution to the tariff situation.
What we know is the only ones that will be able to convince President Trump are Americans themselves. So we need to continue the pressure to make sure that we lobby Washington.
Natural Resources Minister Jonathan Wilkinson is trying to make a case for a Canada-U.S. energy alliance. This as Canada Border Services shows off new technology aimed at stopping the flow of fentanyl across the border. But ultimately, what happens next is really up to Donald Trump. For now, he's still saying the tariff pause is temporary. Alberta's Premier Danielle Smith says Canada needs to do more to address the president's complaints.
We should stop making excuses, stop saying, yeah, but we're not as bad as the other guys. We should just say, yes, we agree, and we're going to take care of our part of the issue so you don't have to worry about us anymore.
And according to U.S. border agents, less than 20 kilograms of fentanyl was seized along our shared border last year. Well, Smith and other premiers will also be lobbying in Washington next week.
Well, the Toronto Regional Real Estate Board is forecasting a 12.4% increase in home sales for 2025.
TREB expects the average selling price to reach nearly $1.15 million, up 2.6% compared to last year, with stronger price growth for single-family homes. The board believes more home buyers will move off the sidelines in the spring. Home sales fell 7.9% in January compared to the first month of last year. There were nearly 12,400 new listings in the GTA last month, up 49% year over year.
Well, travelers are being warned about delays to and from Billy Bishop Airport starting later this month.
The city's doing water main and streetcar track construction at the intersection of Bathurst and Lakeshore. It's scheduled to begin mid-February and last nearly a month. A second phase of the project is going to be carried out between mid-March and mid-April, while the final phase is scheduled to run from April to May. TTC service is set to resume in the area by the end of June following restoration work and streetcar testing.
It's 5:18, -6 out there. You're watching Live at 5.
And coming up, we're going to have local and international reaction to President Donald Trump suggesting the U.S. take over the Gaza Strip.
President Donald Trump's idea to take over Gaza is being met with fierce resistance tonight.
Egypt, Jordan, Saudi Arabia, and Palestinian officials, they're among those condemning the suggestion made by Trump during a White House news conference with Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. The head of the Palestinian Authority says the legitimate rights of his people are not negotiable. Saudi Arabia says it will not normalize relations with Israel, a key goal of the Trump administration, without the establishment of a Palestinian state, which includes Gaza.
Let's bring in CP24's Lindsay Biscaya, who's following reaction to Trump's comments on the future of Gaza. And a lot of people have questions about how this would even work, Lindsay.
Yeah, and I think that's the main question a lot of people are asking, Lena and Bakari, is can you even just go ahead and do this, right? I mean, Trump's talked about Canada becoming the 51st state. He's talked about America taking over Greenland, Panama, now the Gaza Strip. And really, the answer to that question is no, you can't just go ahead and do that. He was asked that yesterday, what authority he would have to make such a move, and he couldn't answer that question. But that's not legal to just go ahead and take over a section of the world. You would need consent of the sovereign authority of the territory. So in this case, you'd need consent of Palestine and the Palestinian people. So far, they have not given that consent. Palestinian state very much against this idea. And so this would need to be almost a military invention of sorts, which of course is not legal. And we heard from many analysts today saying that this is not something you can just go ahead and do. Take a listen.
It becomes political fantasy to think that you're going to be able to reorder the world and particularly the Middle East with regards to this. The Middle East is no place for political fantasies, and particularly the ones that Trump has been promoting over the last several weeks with respect to Israel and Palestine. I fear we're going to be going backwards at a quite rapid speed in terms of trying to find some kind of lasting resolution consistent with international law for the struggle between the Palestinians and the Israelis.
White House Press Secretary Karen Leavitt was giving a press meeting today, and she kept being asked this question about Trump's comments about Gaza yesterday. And so she had to keep reiterating the same thing, talking about how Trump is someone who comes to the table with big ideas, how this is all about lasting peace in the Middle East. She also said, though, that no plan has been hammered down at this time when reporters kept asking her specifics in terms of would this be a military intervention. Here's more from the White House Press Secretary.
The president has not committed to putting boots on the ground in Gaza. He has also said that the United States is not going to pay for the rebuilding of Gaza. His administration is going to work with our partners in the region to reconstruct this region. And let me just take a step back here, because this is an out-of-the-box idea. That's who President Trump is. That's why the American people elected him. And his goal is lasting peace in the Middle East for all people in the region.
Now, the King of Jordan is visiting Donald Trump at the White House next week on Tuesday. So, Lena and Bakari, it'll be a good time to see whether this is going to be an ongoing conversation or whether this was something that Donald Trump just thought about mentioning yesterday. We'll have to wait and see.
Yeah, the controversial remarks just keep on coming, don't they? Lindsay Biscaya live in the newsroom for us tonight. Thanks, Lindsay. It's 5:24 now, -6. You're watching Live at 5.
The Super Bowl is this weekend. Coming up, a tiger at the Iowa Zoo has made its pick for the big game.
Welcome back. A tiger at an Iowa zoo is making his pick for this weekend's big game.
Yeah, the Blank Park Zoo's 13-year-old Amur tiger, Misha, is taking the Chiefs in the Super Bowl. I got a little bit of an issue with that.
I was going to ask you how you feel.
Yep. So Misha was presented with 2 boxes filled with their favorite treats, each decorated with the names and colors of the teams. Well, after a brief moment of contemplation and, let's say, sniffing out the competition, Misha approached the Chiefs box before throwing the Eagles to the side. The zoo says that while the selection's all in good fun, animal enrichment plays an important role in Misha's care.
She's so cute, though. You can't disagree with her. Well, Miami has released an ad trying to discourage spring breakers coming to the beachfront city next month. Take a look at this.
Miami Beach, here we come. Let's go. We got this sick penthouse view of Miami Beach.
I'm here to have the best spring break ever.
Spring break, baby! This is my playground.
Okay, so Lena, this is a little bit before your time. It reminds me of the real world Miami. So the reality TV-style advertisement, it outlines all the steps Miami's taken during the month of March to prevent rowdy crowds. Miami Beach is implementing $100 parking fees on some major streets, curfews, security checkpoints, and a major police presence. All right, all I have to say is good luck with that.
Yeah, that's
spring break ain't stopping.
That is going to be tough. 5:28 -6. You're watching Live at 5 on Toronto's breaking news, CP24.
The candidates hit the campaign trail for another day with the provincial election just weeks away now. What did they promise today? A 16-year-old boy, the city's latest homicide victim, a second male in serious condition, as Toronto police try to connect the dots in a double shooting investigation in Etobicoke. We're live at the scene.
And we are learning more about bizarre rock throwing incidents in the GTA tonight. Another 30 charges have been laid against 2 suspects.
Toronto takes a Team Canada approach as tariff threats loom. We're going to have more on the passionate speeches inside the council chamber today.
And candidates hit the campaign trail for another day with the provincial election just weeks away now. We're going to tell you about a promise to scrap tolls on a portion of the 407.
This is Live at 5.
Good evening, and thank you for joining us. I'm Lena Latafat.
And I'm Bakari Savage. With only weeks left to go before Election Day, a number of promises were made on the campaign trail today.
Yeah, everything from ODSP to homeless encampments to the 407 was discussed. Let's go live to CP24's Sija Liu with the very latest. Tell us more about these pitches, Sija.
Hi, Lena and Bakari. A lot was discussed, a lot was promised. Let's start with PC leader Doug Ford, who is in Pickering today. He made a promise to remove tolls on the publicly owned stretch of Highway 407 East. It's about a 60-kilometer stretch that runs from Brock Road in Pickering to Highway 115 in Clarington. He is promising to remove all these tolls. He is also promising to permanently cut the tax on gas and diesel, and also to pass legislation that would ban any congestion fees on municipal roads and provincial roadways in the province. He says even though the U.S. tariff threat is temporarily paused for now, that as long as Donald Trump is in office, there is always a risk. So he wants to do everything he can right now to make life affordable. Take a listen from Doug Ford on how much money drivers could potentially save if he did remove the tolls on this stretch of Highway 401.
Doing this, it will save a daily commuter $7,200 a year. Just imagine that. Anyone using that area along 407, $7,200 a year are going back into your pocket. Those are enormous savings for families, for workers, and they couldn't come at a better time.
Ontario NDP leader Marit Stiles was in Toronto today in the Parkdale neighborhood. She promised to end homeless encampments. She detailed her party's plan to make this happen, including creating 60,000 new supportive housing units. She also called homeless encampments Doug Ford's biggest failure, although she did not provide any numbers as to how much it will cost to make this promise a reality. Take a listen to what Marit Stiles had to say.
After 7 years of Doug Ford, encampments are the new normal. Seeing tents in parks is a stark reminder of how utterly Doug Ford has failed. He has failed on housing. He has failed on health care. He has failed on creating good jobs. And he has failed to make life affordable.
Affordability was also top of mind for Ontario Liberal leader Bonnie Crombie. She was in Hamilton today. She vowed to double payments for the Ontario Disability Support Program, which is currently maxed out at $1,368 per person. Take a listen to what she had to say on that.
Currently, the commitment is to double the amount that people on ODSP will be receiving. With respect to OW, I really feel that money, since it's a supplement to the EI, should come from the federal government and top up the EI.
As for what we should watch for tomorrow, Green Party leader Mike Schreiner will be in Guelph, and Lena and Bakari, he said he is going to make an announcement then.
From the campaign trail, CP24, CJ Lou. CJ, thank you very much. Well, also, there's no shortage of patriotism at City Hall these days as the City of Toronto responds to the threat of American tariffs.
Yeah, members unanimously approved a Buy Local, Buy Canadian campaign today. And for once, everyone on council was on the same page. CP24's Beatrice Vaisman has more on that this evening. Beatrice.
Yeah, it's been an interesting day, Lena and Bakari, here at Toronto City Hall. Pardon me, I started choking just before we came up live on air. Not choking, though, our councillors earlier when they established these motions that called for people to buy local, to support local, and really called on city staff as well to start shopping local when it comes to procurement. So contracts specifically, that is something that can be controlled at the municipal level. The city gets to choose who gets these contracts. And there's hundreds of millions of dollars of contracts awarded for things like TTC, police, housing, any number of building contracts. And so the goal moving forward from city staff is going to be at looking at procurement policies, and also the mayor has asked city staff to look at existing contracts with American companies as well. As for how possible that is, well, historically, and we spoke to Councillor Malik about it, there has been times when American companies got the nod over the local Toronto or Canadian companies. They're looking at changing that now. So really the situation with the tariffs, despite the fact that we've got a reprieve for 30 days, has brought a lot of patriotism, not only for the shop local approach, but here to City Council as well on ways to support local businesses. And here's what we heard from a couple of councillors earlier today.
It's a combination of getting in partnership with the consumers who are already out there buying Canadian like crazy. I mean, this is the silver lining in all this, that madman in the United States has basically united the whole country and activated this Love Canada campaign. So thanks for that. So it's buying, it's procurement, it's relationships, everything that we do economically, we do in a business way as a city, we should do it in a Canadian way.
We should be doing this regardless of Trump. I hope that one positive thing that will come out of this whole chaotic chapter is, rather than define ourselves for what we're not, we should celebrate who we are. We are a Canadian community, and we should be supporting our local businesses and entrepreneurs and our products. So I would love to see our city take meaningful steps to encourage all residents to support our local businesses, shop local. It's good for our economy. It's good for our life.
And we see a lot of people doing exactly that. Now, when it comes to procurement specifically, the city manager is saying that goods and services that come from the U.S. only account for about 10% of the city's procurement projects, but still, it's a lot of money when you're looking at a budget that's in the billions. So city staff being asked to go back and reevaluate all of that, also getting the green light today. And I'm not sure it's getting a live feed into the Oval Office to get President Trump's attention, but city councillors also voting unanimously, Lena and Bakari, to essentially refute Trump's claims that Canada should become the 51st state. So still going here at City Hall. A long day of meetings, but tariffs certainly at the very top of the agenda today, and the push to buy local as well.
Yeah, symbolic, but important to have these conversations. Beatrice live at City Hall for us tonight. Thanks, Beatrice. You're watching Live at 5 on Toronto's Breaking News, CP24.
And coming up, the police have identified a 16-year-old boy as the city's latest homicide victim. The victim of a deadly shooting in Etobicoke has been identified.
Yeah, 16-year-old Isaiah Foga and another male were shot at a building on Capri Road near the East Mall in Rathburn around 5:30 p.m. yesterday. This is in Etobicoke. Both were rushed to hospital where Foga later died.
And for the latest on the investigation, let's go live to CP24's Phil Perkins, who's on the scene at Capri Road. Phil, you've had a chance to talk to some people who live around there.
Oh, yeah, Bakari and Lena, this place is packed. It's nonstop busy since around 3:15 this afternoon when high schools were getting out. There's a daycare across the street from us at 5 Capri Towers, just across the street from 7 Capri, where this fatal shooting happened. And speaking to a lot of parents, a lot of kids who say that they were aware of 16-year-old Isaiah Foga, who lived in this tower behind me here. Just kids coming out of school saying that they would just sometimes just see him walking on the street, getting onto the bus. Nothing really too more detailed than that. Unaware if he has any siblings, or really what exactly happened yesterday. I did speak to one individual who goes to this high school just south of us here, and he said he lives nearby and he remembers what happened 24 hours ago. It was quite the scene here. The squad cars flooding into the tower here, multiple people involved. And so it was definitely a traumatic scene, and it felt like the reverberations from yesterday's double shooting is still being felt from people who live here. But in the end, 2 people shot. 16-year-old Isaiah Foga later died from his injuries. The other victim, all we know is that they're a young male. Yesterday we were told late teens, early 20s. We're not sure if they're also 16 or what age they are, but we do know they're still in hospital. I spoke with Toronto Police trying to get an update to see on their current condition right now. In terms of the suspects, 2 people right now police are looking for. The only descriptor we have is that they were seen fleeing and that they were wearing masks. That's it. So really the people we're speaking with are those in the community. We spoke to one gentleman who has a very personal story to how this murder affects him personally. And we also spoke to a neighbor who lives across the street and is a mother of 2. And this is how she reacted once knowing that someone right now is going to eventually bury their 16-year-old son. Here's what they had to say.
The building itself, like I've never had, the management was great and all the tenants. I still have, like I said, I still have friends that live in the building. Right. And
did they say anything about what happened yesterday? Did they notice anything?
They haven't said anything, probably just because they're incredibly shaken up and scared as it just happened yesterday. I saw on a group I'm in that people reported being brought down from their units and onto the floors, and it was extremely traumatic. But paying my respects is the most important.
It's quite dramatic. The little kids are scared.
they were making comments, oh, last night someone died. You know, some of these kids are 6, 4, 5. My daughter is turning 5 tomorrow. She has an older brother named Jay Sean. He's in the community too. There's a lot of youths in the area, and they're affected. 2 young people in the area that they see every day end up getting shot. 2 things could happen. It's either you get really scared and stay home, which is not good. It still affects you. Now you have a traumatic experience that you got to work through. Some of them might react differently. Well, this happened, I'm going to go get a gun, right? Or they might start grouping up to protect themselves. We don't want them to make the wrong choices. We want them to be able to come to the right resource centers and the right individuals that can help them walk through this experience.
And so again, Lena, police are still looking for the 2 suspects. We understand there are 2 males wearing masks, and they were seen leaving the scene of these towers here on Capri after the shooting 24 hours ago. Back to you guys.
All right, more gun violence in Toronto. Phil Perkins, thanks for this. Well, new details are emerging from the trial of 2 teen girls in the swarming death of a homeless man in 2022.
Yeah, 2 of the 8 girls charged in the death of 59-year-old Kenneth Lee, they're currently on trial. And court has heard that other girls in the group were seen with a knife earlier that night, but no knife was recovered as part of the investigation. The girls' trial is expected to last about 2 weeks.
Well, 30 additional charges have been laid against 2 suspects in connection with rock-throwing incidents in Markham and Whitchurch-Stouffville.
A 17-year-old boy and 18-year-old man, they are now charged with 31 counts of mischief under $5,000. So the 17-year-old is also now charged with 1 count of assault with a weapon. Both were arrested late last month in the York police investigation into more than 24 rock-throwing incidents, which began in July of last year, some of which targeted moving vehicles.
First and foremost, you want to think what's important now if you are in your vehicle and a rock does come through your window. As tough as it may seem in that moment, try to slow things down, pull over if it's safe to do so, and just reassess. If you are seriously injured, are you able to call for help? And just remain in the vehicle. And if you can, again, in the heat of the moment, try to remember as much as you can as to what direction it might have come from if you do see it ahead of time, and just as much detail as possible to assist our investigators.
OPP are investigating 11 similar incidents on Highway 48 in Markham. In one case, a driver struck by a rock crashed and 2 people suffered critical injuries. So this is incredibly dangerous. The OPP tells CP24 they have not connected the accused from the York case to any of their investigations at this time.
It's 5:46, holding at 6 below zero. This is Live at 5.
Coming up, U.S. President Donald Trump has signed an executive order on transgender athletes. We'll have more from the Oval Office.
U.S. President Donald Trump's idea to take over Gaza, it's being met with fierce resistance.
Let's bring in CP24's Lindsay Biscaya, who's following reaction to Trump's comments on the future of Gaza. Lindsay.
Yeah, and a lot of different countries, Lina Bakari, very much against this idea. Big player Saudi Arabia condemning it, as well as Jordan, Egypt, Palestinian officials, members of the UN Security Council, so Russia, China, Britain, France, all saying that they support a 2-state solution. So it doesn't sound as though there's a lot of support for this idea from Donald Trump, which was just voiced yesterday. And there's also a lot of questions surrounding, is this even possible? Is this even legal? Donald Trump was asked that yesterday by a reporter, what authority would you have to actually do this? And he couldn't answer the question. And that's because you can't actually just go ahead and do this. You would need consent of the sovereign authority of the territory. So in this case, you'd need consent of Palestine and the Palestinian people. And at this point, Donald Trump very much does not seem as though he has consent from the Palestinian people. And so we've been hearing from analysts as well who are saying that this is not something you could just go ahead and do without military intervention, which is also illegal. Take a listen.
The scale of this effort would be huge, and it would involve U.S. troops. And I don't think he has thought that through entirely because, of course, Hamas is still present. That's problem number one. Number two, relocating, as he put it, but as everyone else has called it, the forced displacement of the Palestinians from the Gaza Strip. Under what legal authority would that happen, and what mechanism would you use? Would you physically put people on buses or trucks and truck them out of the country? I don't see that happening either. And then finally, building the Riviera on the Mediterranean, the Riviera of the Middle East is it's a fantasy.
And it's interesting when you think, too, Lena and Bakari, about how Donald Trump campaigned a lot about putting America first and, not having U.S. troops go into different countries, especially in the Middle East. This seems to be negating that. White House Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt was asked about this quite a few times today, and she just kept saying that there's no official plan formed yet. She said Donald Trump is a man who comes forward with new ideas to bring solutions to the table, and that possibly we'll hear more about this plan in the future. Back to you.
All right, Lindsay Biscaya reporting live tonight. So U.S. President Donald Trump making headlines by saying he wants the U.S. to take over the Gaza Strip. He's also making headlines by signing an executive order designed to prevent transgender athletes from taking part in women's or girls' sports.
The order marks another shift by his administration in the way the federal government deals with transgender people and their rights. It gives federal agencies wide latitude to ensure entities that receive federal funding follow the Trump administration's view that sex is the gender someone was assigned at birth.
5:52 minus 6 out there. You're watching Live at 5.
How could the threat of a trade war impact the travel industry? We're going to take a closer look at this next. Relations between Canada and the U.S. have really soured after Donald Trump threatened to shake Canada's economy. It's prompted a patriotic response from Canadians, with many going out of their way to buy local.
And now some travel agencies are beginning to report travelers are scrapping their trips to the U.S. So could this spark a trend? For more on this, let's bring in Martin Firestone. He's a travel expert and president of Travel Secure. Thanks for joining us tonight, Martin. Good to see you. Look, it wasn't that long ago the Prime Minister urged Canadians to reconsider traveling to the U.S. in the midst of this ugly back and forth. Do you see that happening?
No, not at all. As a matter of fact, that tariffs are not the problem we're all facing right now. It's more the dollar at this point that has caused some concern. I'm not seeing anything. There were a few angry people that called to ask if their trip cancellation insurance would possibly kick in if they wanted to cancel and not go on their trip. Well, of course, that's not a covered reason. There is no clause that reads tariff from one country to another. So that's out of the question. Bottom line, I'm seeing very little from a cancellation perspective on insurance, because that is what my field is. But there are people that are angry. It's a bit of a knee-jerk reaction. That isn't the problem. The problem is that dollar right now more than anything.
Okay, so Martin, today's Wednesday. Monday was real ugly. We woke up, the loonie was really low, the stock market, we're not going to talk about that. People wanting to change their trip because, look, they don't have as much buying power. What are the options there? And should people just maybe say, hey, let's take a break, wait for things to bounce back, or look at someplace where we can spend more?
Well, nothing like a good snowstorm to wake people up and say, I want to get away. So that is, something that will happen naturally. But at the end of the day, this is the bottom line. People, snowbirds in particular, no one's canceling trips. They either own or rent or have arrangements. Why would they travel elsewhere if they already have this place down in the U.S.? So that's not going to be a situation. I think maybe people who are going for March break could change their destination and say they want to go to the Caribbean, some destinations, Portugal, Japan. I just can't see a huge amount of people doing this. Right now, it's anger talking and nothing more than that.
Right. Right now, we're also waiting to see what Donald Trump does in 30 days. If Canadians start to cancel trips, rethink their vacations to the U.S., what do you think that would do to the American tourism economy, given that, Canada is the top source of international visitors to the U.S., generating about $20 billion in spending in 2024?
It would be a disaster. If you recall back in COVID days, if anything, there was a word called vaccine tourism, and that was that Florida was actually welcoming Canadians to come down to get their vaccines because they didn't want their economy to be hurt. And that just tells you right there that the U.S. wants us big time and would want nothing to dissuade us from that kind of thinking. So let's hope maybe in 30 days there will be no tariffs. And if there isn't, hopefully the Canadian dollar will find its way back up again and travel will be back to, let's call it normal at this point.
All right, Martin Firestone, travel expert and president of Travel Secure. Thanks a lot.
Thanks, Martin.
Thank
Good
you
to
for
see
having
you.
me.
Well, the weekend has added a fourth concert in Toronto this summer.
The hometown artist will bring his After Hours Till Dawn tour to Rogers Centre July 27th and 28th and August 7th and 8th. The third show was added yesterday, and the fourth night was announced today. Ticket sales to the general public start Friday.
Scarborough's very own coming back to the 6th. That'll be great. You're watching Toronto's breaking news, CP24.
Thank you for watching CTV News at 6. It's up next. It's 5:59, holding at 6 below zero. Feeling more like 10 below outside.
Thanks for watching. Have a good night.